So why am I talking about Hildegard of Bingen this morning in the Unitarian Universalist Church? Partially because fall just brings about this new way of how we interact with nature, with a coat, and we start to notice all the changes. Also, our theme this month is heritage. And I started thinking about our Christian heritage because I'm doing a little presentation at the orientation right after the service this morning. So Unitarianism and Universalism both have decidedly Christian roots. Not Catholic ones, but as all Christianity came up through the Catholic Church originally, we still have that connection. But if you're not a Christian, how do you partake in the wisdom this morning? You might not believe in the resurrection. You might not even believe Jesus was a person walking the earth. But Hildegard is a teacher for us either way. In her exquisite belief about spirituality and our humanness and nature being one, they are inseparable. Perhaps this is our Unitarian Universalist Holy Trinity, spirituality, humanness, nature, all together. And Hildegard was a woman of incredible courage. She is also considered a mystic, and I know we don't talk a lot about mystics. In the language of Catholicism, her mysticism was having insight into mysteries transcending a normal human experience. She had reached a union with God in a spiritual perfection. So let's reflect on that just for a moment in the context of 12th century Catholicism. Direct union with God was not even thought of for the common people. God was here. The common people were there. And there were all these sets of intermediaries in between. Some of them even cost money to try to get from there through the intermediary to have a conversation with God, and you didn't get to have it directly. Mystics stepped to the front of the line. God was here, and God was everywhere. And so for mystics, everywhere, including carrying a spark within, and conversation could just happen. Mystics of many faith traditions, and I especially think of Sufism, what they have in common are deep ways of knowing, and often not the traditional ways of their time. They run the risk of being labeled heretics. Mystics would unearth and speak about essential truths that are so universal they remain stable well into the future. There are many things in Hildegard's beliefs that I can apply right now to my life. And because they're speaking truths, in that way they're also prophets. They're speaking about what could be if we would just allow it to be so, if we could just get out of our own way. Women mystics were also subversive. They would mess with corrupt church structures, they would challenge patriarchy, and on occasion they would manipulate politics if the opportunity was open to them. And Hildegard was definitely one such mystic. She was a prophet for the importance of environmental management. In the 12th century, she was already concerned about the health and longevity of the forests in Europe. She believed that we are saved, in part, through the union with the planet. And so primal matter and dirt, trees, medicinal herbs, plants of all kinds were extremely important to her. She spoke often of the interconnected web of all existence, but used slightly different words. So whether you live a secular humanist life, a Buddhist life, you might be Muslim or Hindi or Christian, mystics have something to say to all of us about living a life of integrity, about walking closer with what we think of as spirit or a deeper existence. I would say most of us are trying to alleviate suffering of others, or at least acknowledge it with compassion. Mystics can help you walk in the mysteries of the universe and explore what Hildegard calls the fiery truths. So as we heard in the video, well, we heard it, we didn't see it. She was born in Germany in 1098, and she died in 1179. The 12th century was a time when monastic life made great contributions to writing and music and intellectual and philosophical thought. The first crusade out of Europe had already reached Constantinople and overtaken there, and the second was launched also during Hildegard's time. There was great corruption in the church, and the Inquisition was starting to just brew over here behind Hildegard's shoulder. She was the daughter of a noble family, and she left home very early. Her parents sent her to the convent as their annual tithe. I believe she was one of 10 kids. I think she was the youngest of 10. There is some dispute about her exact age when she entered the Disbonenberg monastery, but she might have been as young as 8. And she was entrusted to the older women of the community, and especially to the care of Jutta of Sponheim, who was a teenager. And although Hildegard received no formal education, Jutta taught her Latin because that was necessary for Bible study. She also taught Hildegard theology and the ways of monastic life. One of the most important things to note about Hildegard, and she didn't actually let people know this until she was in her early 40s, she had visions of light. She sometimes became quite ill and bedridden. She would describe them as illuminations, and these were conversations she had with God. Some modern-day physicians believe Hildegard suffered from migraines, extreme migraines and frequent ones, which included hallucinations of light patterns. So Hildegard hid these visions, these illuminations at first. She really didn't talk about them for decades. And I'll tell you why. I will quote her, because she was afraid of what male church leaders would say. Because of doubt and low opinion, and because of the diverse sayings of men. So she feared disbelief, she feared persecution. But later, an illumination from God, because remember, they killed heretics. It wasn't just that she feared the verbal persecution. There could have been tremendous consequences. But God told her to start sharing her visions, and so she did. Hildegard she was so well regarded. She had become the head of the Benedictine Abbey for women. She moved her community of nuns, though, from Disbonenberg to a land she purchased in Bingen. And she supervised the building of the monasteries there because she wanted it to be in a very certain way. And although no one said this, after reading some of Hildegard's writings and history of the time, I think she moved the abbey to be further away from the influence of male church leaders. She wanted her women to have their own retreat and abbey. So just before Bingen, Hildegard, as writing became known to Pope Eugene III. And so the fact that he would even read writings from a woman, first of all, she had already established a reputation, or he would have never touched them in the first place. But then after he read them, it gave her legitimacy. The Pope actually encouraged Hildegard, a woman, to continue sharing her visions or illuminations. So at that point, Hildegard became more prolific. She wrote poetry, music, and it's unusual that music is preserved from the 12th century. She wrote 77 songs that we're aware of. She wrote books about biology. She was very interested in medicine. She was using some of the traditional ideas of medicine at that time as to why people became ill, but taking it a step further with her natural healing. She painted incredible mandalas that told the story of creation and how humans experience and re-experience the earth. She also worked on theology that connected humans to the terra. She became so popular, she was able to begin a preaching tour. She traveled throughout Germany and Switzerland and France. And of course, she couldn't preach from a pulpit because women would not have been allowed in the pulpit or to speak in the church. So she had to give talks to lay people and clergy. Her presentations often addressed corruption in the church. But somehow, deep persecution did not come her way. She was so exceptional. She corresponded with several popes, the Queen of Greece, King Henry II of England, and many other important figures who sought her counsel. And over 100 of those letters are still preserved today. So she often found herself at odds with monks and male members of the church. And one of the most intense moments was almost at the end of her life, which means she lost none of her spunk as she got older. She allowed a nobleman to be buried in her abbey's churchyard. In years prior, he had been excommunicated from the Catholic Church. But she allowed him in her churchyard cemetery. The Catholic Church wanted him exhumed, and Hildegard refused. Hildegard said that she knew he had reconciled with God and with the church before he died, which means he had used Hildegard as a confessor. So Hildegard lashes the letter back to the church leaders at Mainz. She writes, I missed something. The church that got really angry at her, the church leaders down at Mainz, and then they said, they knew how much she loved music, you and your abbey can no longer sing. So Hildegard writes them back. Those who silence the church in its praise of God do so at their own peril. So you must use the greatest vigilance before stopping by decree the mouth of any assembled people singing to God. Those who choose to silence music in this lifetime will go to a place where they will be without the company of angelic songs. So in other words, she told powerful church leaders, there's a special place in hell for you. The ban was lifted. What Hildegard wrote can be held especially close, I think, by Unitarian Universalists, in the way in which God, in her illuminations, instructed her on how humans must be connected to the soil, the earth, and the cosmos. She painted mandalas after having an illumination or a vision. There's one inserted in your order of service, and Christy treated you to printing it in color. This one that is in your order of service is called the Cosmic Tree. As I mentioned before, Hildegard studied science, especially biology, and she studied the cosmos. For Hildegard, there was great healing when the microcosm, which is us, and the macrocosm, the universe, come together. And she wrote about this quite a bit. These are her words. Glance at the sun, see the moon and the stars, gaze at the beauty of Earth's greenings. Now think. What delight God gives to humankind with all these things. All nature is at the disposal of humankind, but we are to work with it, for without it, we cannot survive. So she preached that we as humans are brought into balance when we are creatively and gently, but industriously, cultivate the earth, and that we do so with thanks, and we recognize this symbiotic relationship. She says the universe has longed for the wedding of humanity and the planet. And she viewed all living things as sparks from God's brilliance. She describes it in a vision. I saw how the moisture from the gentle layer of the air flowed over the earth. This air revived the earth's greening power and caused all fruits to put forth seeds and become fertile. From the gentle layer of air, moisture effervescence over the earth. It wakens the earth's greenness and causes all the fruits to appear. Hildegard also wanted union for women and for men. She wanted them to share in a deep mutuality. At no time did she see this as against God's plan. And I'll tell you, fun fact, Hildegard appears to be the first woman who wrote about the female orgasm. And we have her writings to prove it. She struggled very hard to be heard in patriarchal culture. And in one of her paintings, she draws patriarchy as in business with the devil. At this point, the commissioner sent a small band to investigate her teachings. But remember, the Pope was on her side. Hildegard, like other mystics, both male and female, trusted her own experiences and perceptions. She trusted them as coming directly from God, so humans could not sway her. The more I read about Hildegard, I think there was some protection around her, divine or otherwise. It is startling to me that she was not killed early in her life at the Abbey. She strongly took on what is wrong with the church, and she lived to tell the tale. And as one of her scholars who writes about Hildegard in great detail, Bernard Schultz, Hildegard castigated the Pope for his timidity and moral blindness. She taught scholars and preached to clergy and laity as no woman had ever been allowed to do before. She claimed both women and men can do God's work. As I'm bringing this sermon to a close, I really encourage you to spend a little time with her this week. If you just want to see Hildegard for her art, Google up the mandalas, and if you can see the cosmic tree on a screen, you'll get greater variation in color, and you'll really be able to see the wind going into the mandala. Her truths were so profound and fundamental that they go beyond religious sect, and they go beyond time. They touch something deep in our cultural psyche. And what happens is bringing to the surface of the unconscious mind into the conscious mind. And it can sustain us in this time where our tending of the environment is so important. I also got another piece from Hildegard. For those of you who don't know, I've been off giving public comment at the city commissioners' meetings. Considering I'm someone who does public speaking for a living, I am weirdly nervous when I go to do this. And the last one I went to, there was so much fear in the room. There was so much pain. And I'd already started working on this sermon, and so I sort of channeled up my inner Hildegard because I needed to speak with confidence to power, and I needed to not get tongue-tied. And you can too. So this week and into the future, let Hildegard deepen your commitment to environmental justice, to healing your body and spirit, and to calling out corruption at the city gates. Which that's from Amos, from the Hebrew Bible. So amen and blessed be.